Well, hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Stanley Safaris Podcast, where we chat to the owners of the camps and lodges that we love to send our guests to. My name is Sean Stanley. I'm the founder of Stanley Safaris, and today I am chatting to Luke Evans, one of the founders of Classic Zambia. Thanks for joining me, Luke.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So, you're currently sitting in Austria at the moment, but your background, you were born in Zambia. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into safaris, and how you ended up founding Tuscan Maine back in the day, and now part of Classic Zambia.
So born and bred in Zambia. Sean, my grandparents actually operated some of the first camps in the Kafue National Park back in the day.
Sure. How long ago was that? When was that?
That would have been in the 70s and 80s.
Sure.
So some of the Busanga camps, my grandfather had fly camps up there where Busanga bush camp is, and some of those wilderness camps, even our own in Temwa, and then settled at Musungwa Lodge on Lake Teshi. And my parents used to worked with my grandfather on my dad's side. That's my dad's side I'm talking about. And then nearby was a certain Norman Carr who used to run a hunter camp in Kafue called Ngoma Safari Lodge. And my parents, this is when I was about 2 years old, my parents worked for him and then later moved to South Luangwa National Park to help him with his photographic safaris there. And that's where I actually spent most of my childhood at Kapani Camp in Mfuri, which is no longer, and Chinzombo Safari Camp. And actually, quite interestingly, Phil, who is Phil Jeffrey, one of the other founders of Classic Zambia and Tyrone's original partner, and Jeffrey and McKee Safaris, his parents used to run Chinzombo Camp. So I know him since I'm very, very small. And so grew up in Mfuri. Back then, I think there were 3 camps in that area. Very little going on.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I went to boarding school in Kenya. Got to know a few safari people up there just by chance, and then ended up working for Robin Pope Safaris for quite a few years, running Tena Tena and in South Luangwa, and then they're opening and operating Pumulani in Monkey Bay in Malawi. And in the meantime, my parents were all around the place. My dad then went and opened his own camp, Hippo Lodge in the Kafue National Park, and later went to work for Tongabezi Safaris. And sorry, the story's convoluted, but it's quite interesting. And they opened. This is where my Lower Zambezi connection comes. So Dad was tasked with opening the second camp in the Lower Zambezi National Park, which back then was Chifungulu Safaris, the current Sausage Tree Camp.
Yeah.
And Potato Bush. And Potato Bush back then was what is currently Old Mandora. So those were the 2 camps belonging to Sausage Tree and Tongabezi Safari. So that's why I spent most of my teen years before I actually went to work for Robin Pope. I then left Africa to do a couple of seasons in the Austrian Alps, and then came back to work for Sausage Tree again. And that's where I met Kyle Branch, the other founder of Classic Zambia Safaris. We worked together for a couple of seasons, and we absolutely
guiding
fell in
at
love.
That point?
So I started out guiding when I was about 17, 18, but I said to myself very, early on, my dream was always to do my own thing with safaris, and I wanted to make sure that I'd worked in every single section of it. So, and the safari guiding side was something I knew and in my heart felt would be and should be very, very Zambian, so local indigenous Zambian. And this is something that I felt that I was kind of just occupying a seat. That's my own sort of personal point of view on it, but I wanted to get into the workshop, get into the marketing, get into the procurement. The lodge building is camp building, all of that kind of behind the scenes stuff. And so yeah, that's what I did. I went very quickly into camp management at Robin Pope Safaris, and then after that into operations with sausage camps. I was running things out of Lusaka, procurement and camp building and stuff like that, and then into the marketing. So actually going out into the world and talking about Zambia, which I'm incredibly passionate about, and things like We Are Africa, these travel shows, or ITB in Berlin, and meeting tour operators like yourself, and trying to see things, how people see them from outside of Zambia, and trying to match those expectations and trying to lift the lid on the special things that Zambia has to offer. And then, yeah, hit it off with Kyle from day one. And, as one does over a beer or on the Zambezi at sunset, when the guests have all left and campus packed down, we started talking about our own dreams and ambitions. And we heard of the opportunity to use some of the old canoeing or expedition B sites, they're called, in the Lower Zambezi, and these were completely neglected. I think very few people realize that whilst canoeing kind of made its mark, well, it did. The Zimbabwean side of the river put canoeing on the map. What few people realize is those that knew what they were doing were going across to the Zambian side to explore the many channels on the Zambezi on that side, which you can see on Google Earth. And yeah, Kyle and I were exploring these often in our free time, and we knew that some of these B sites were there. And fundamentally, we felt that at the time, there was a bit of an arms race in Southern Africa in general, and certainly in Zambia, heading towards this very boutique-y luxury style safari camp, which, don't get me wrong, has a very important role and is needed. But we very much wanted, there's two elements to this. We very much wanted to give a balance to that, to somebody who just wants to have their feet on the ground in the bush and get close to nature. And secondly, we wanted to show Zambia could go that authentic path that it had always pioneered, whether that is the remote Africa safaris with the Coppinger family, the Shentons, the Robin Pope, and of course Norman Carr. And we wanted to follow in that tradition. And certainly in the Lower Zambezi, it's quite a delicate national park in terms of size and operational area. And we wanted to show the Zambian government, but also our peers and the industry at large, that a light-footed sort of back to basics operation could come in there and punch above its weight in terms of the commercial value to the country, but also in terms of the pure type of safari that we offer to our clients and who walk in through our doors. And we just happen to know some incredibly nice canoeing B sites, which would really, if I'm absolutely honest, give us a really good chance to do that. I mean, our locations are amazing.
Yeah, and that's Kutali and Chula Island. And you often combine the two of them. Do you find that works really well for your guests?
Yes. So in an ideal world, I'd encourage everybody to combine them. And this is simply when we walked in there and chose to combine these two sites, we said to ourselves, what is one of the special things about the Lower Zambezi? If we zoom out and we're sitting in London or in Milan or in the US and New York or somewhere, and comparing this to other well-known national parks. And for me, simply the variety of activities, the density of wildlife, and the sheer beauty. So we kind of tried to find two locations that really complemented that as best as possible, gave slight variation, but gave the best of those activities, and came up with the two sites. And from in our first seasons, we actually used to move the whole camp from one location to the other. But
sure.
we learned very quickly that erodes all profits as you go back into repairing things, and so we staying true to things. We have seasonal camps there that we take down each rainy season. But yeah, the combination is definitely what makes it. Having said that, the camps also work as a standalone. That national park is in anybody's camps, our own at Classic Zambia or anybody else's. That national park warrants at least a 4-night stay. And I was competing, or we were competing a little bit against an external narrative, which I think you could probably attest to back in the day. Tour operators very often, try and get clients through as many stations as possible on their safari planning.
Yeah.
And this was often dictated by demand and expectation, often misplaced from the client themselves. But those tour operators who really know their stuff and take the time to dig into things, realize that the Lower Zambezi needs a 4-night stay.
Yeah.
And one of the tricks that we used, and I won't claim it as my own, I was advised by a certain Joe Pope. She said, if you have 2 locations and insist on a 4-night stay, you'll get those people to stay 4 nights. And that certainly proved the case. The fundamentals behind that are correct, though. It is an amazing combination.
We are finding more and more people asking to spend longer in each area, not bounce around so much. I mean, we've always been an advocate of minimum 3 nights. And if people have the time, do the 4 nights. It just takes a lot of pressure off the camps and the guides to try and fit as much in such a short space of time. So yeah, I'm glad you guys pioneered that back then, and we are seeing more and more of that coming through from our guests now.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. I remember some early conversations with you, and you supported us very, very early on when we started. And this was one of the common ground areas that we had. It was actually trying to get people to stay a little bit longer. And I think things like COVID certainly helped people see things through a different lens. But the best lever that you have if you're trying to see animals and enjoy it is time.
Yeah, perfect. And I love the fact that you guys are kind of keeping it grounded in terms of the camp style, and you're not going that very high end butler and all that sort of concept. And for me, that's what Zambia is. Zambia is about these small owner-run bush camps, big focus on the walking and the guiding. And you guys all being guides, the guiding element is such an important part of that. So just talk us through a little bit about the guiding element at your camps and why that is so important.
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I asked myself when I did this is, and sit down with Kyle, and you say, why would somebody spend so much money to come here and really have a proper look at this? What really counts? And try and bottle that down to the simplest answer you could give, and it's to see the animals, Sean. Yeah, and then we asked ourselves, how could we enrich that experience, and how can we do that justice, what the client actually is coming here for, And the single biggest place where we can improve that is through our people. and through the guiding. It's not the infrastructure as such that should always play a secondary role, in our opinion. It's who we put you in that vehicle with, who we put you on that game drive, in that canoe, and or in the hide. Somebody who really, number one, knows their stuff, and number two, has the passion. And when you walk away from that wildlife experience, you're thinking, "Wow, geez, that was really something," you know. And so, and everybody talks about this, and it's to say you focus on the guiding is easy to say. From day one, number one, we're very lucky. Kyle is an extraordinary, and Phil, and they're probably in their age bracket, in my opinion, within the top, 10 to 15 guides in Southern Africa. And that goes across the board. It's not just in terms of knowledge, it's also just able to communicate and deliver. I always say, those two can keep a 2-year-old entertained on the vehicle and an 82-year-old entertained, And I'm drifting a little bit, but so Kyle particularly does the guide training in Zambia. He's been involved in the 15 years he's been there. He's been involved from the get-go in Zambia's drive to nationalize its curriculum. He's written the guiding exams for walking and canoeing. He examines them daily. He also runs our internal, let's say, guide school. We have a system in Classic Zambia. We're old school at heart, and it's an apprenticeship system, more or less. We get people in. They start in the rooms or in waitering, and then they tag along with the existing guides into our guide training program, and it takes a long time to get them trained up. We got a lot of flack for this in the early years, just not having enough guides. But for us was fundamental that we wanted to train the guides from the ground up and follow that old school system and get away from a hire and fire mentality in the guiding aspect. So early on, we hired who we knew from the industry, those long in the tooth guides that had that certain X factor. They could mentor the young guys. And we're thankfully, through our guide training program and particularly Kyle's efforts, Sean, we're now in a position where, hand on heart, I think we're producing the best generation of Zambian safari guides in Zambia, which we're churning them out. Our goal is not only to produce enough guides for our own camps, and we are expanding and so on. Our goal is very much to do Zambia justice in the guiding front and train and produce enough guides that even if we can't employ all of those that we're training, they're going to be sought after guides if they don't work for us. And that's going to serve Zambia really well, and therefore our industry, and therefore the clients.
Everyone benefits, and that maintains the image of the incredible guiding that Zambia is renowned for. So well done. That's fantastic. Yeah. So Luke, talk to me a little bit about your conservation and community initiatives. Obviously, we spoke to Tyrone, and Musikesi conservation is a huge part of the Kafui side. Talk us through a little bit in terms of what you guys are doing down in the Lower Zambezi.
Absolutely. So conservation is and the use and management of these amazing wilderness areas is the glue that brought us all together. It's the glue that it's the foundation of who we are as a foursome operating Classic Zambia Safaris. We just happen to identify tourism as the single best method to make an impact. As we felt, and I think everyone knows this, but these amazing areas are only worth something to the country and its population if they have some kind of commercial value. So we chose tourism as the vehicle, and you've spoken to Tyrone about the amazing story of Muskesi conservation in that incredible wilderness area. For us, myself and Kyle, on the Lower Zambezi side, the Lower Zambezi's geography is critical to so much of what happens down there. And predominantly all of the traffic, let's say, good and bad, comes in from the western side. That's where all the sort of administrative headquarters and so on and so forth. And so we have always worked very closely with Conservation Lower Zambezi. They are the predominant conservation organization, along with the DMPW, Department of National Parks and Wildlife. They work in tandem in the Lower Zambezi, and they're based in the Western GMA, which is quite away from us, about 4.5 hours away. Sure. And they were already long in existence before Kyle and I set up with Tuscany and then Classic Zambia. So it was a no-brainer for us to put our weight and the tourism revenue and conservation levies that we generate with our beds straight behind Conservation Lower Zambezi. So that's predominantly where the conservation work from the Lower Zambezi gets channeled. And I can only speak highly of Conservation Lower Zambezi, do an incredible job, whether that's on community awareness, anti-poaching, research, the whole lot. Yeah. So that's that. And then our conservation background as Classic Zambia, and I think this is worth a mention. You're aware, I think we applied to operate in the North Luangwa National Park back in 2019. Yep. And the North Luangwa National Park has quite a strict plan as to how they want tourism to develop in that park. And our application was only looked at and actually only got through the early stages and final stages to sign off in the middle of last year because of our conservation credentials, and predominantly, I must say, because of the efforts of Muskesi conservation. I believe as a tourism company, we've really tried to put our money where our mouth is as well with that. That whole Muskesi story, as you know, was funded out of tourism. And this certainly gave us the right credentials to go to an amazing place like North Luangwa National Park, and the opportunity to work up there with Frankfurt Zoological Society. Sure. I think if you look at their CV, for want of a better word, anywhere they've operated in Africa, you can only tip your hat, and to be a part of that story and contribute to it and channel our tourism efforts into that landscape and ecosystem is an absolute privilege. So that's really
amazing to hear that they look at that when you're applying. They're not just looking at who's going to bring the most money in, they're looking at the conservation background before allowing you guys into those areas. So that's fantastic to hear that.
No, absolutely. This was a huge criterion, and it was a really it was great for us to see, and it was amazing to be a part of, and there's a lot of respect, and we've got to also do that justice. We've got some big plans to really help in the conservation side, particularly in North Luangwa. Over these things take time, but over time is the community development side of things up there, and job creation. I think that's incredibly important in such a remote park like that.
Yeah. It's important that our guests know that the money they're spending, coming and staying with you guys is going into these amazing projects. And it's one of the reasons why we only work with privately owned camps like yourself, where we know the money is going into these places. So again, congratulations. So over the years, we've seen Zambia change. You've lived there, you've seen it from its heyday in way back and when it first started. As a tour operator, it was generally quite difficult to sell Zambia. Not many people outside of Africa knew about it, and it was quite a hard sell to get people to come into Zambia. We've seen a shift in that we're now finding more people coming and requesting to come into Zambia. How have you seen that shift on the ground over the years that you've been there?
Yeah, it's trying to find the right words. It's good. It's difficult when you come from Zambia because you know how good the experience is and you know how good these areas are. Yeah. And we kind of have never done ourselves justice on a national level in marketing ourselves. If you compare us to our neighboring countries of Botswana, certainly Zimbabwe, and even I'll reach out there and say Malawi. Malawi did a good job of marketing themselves, and Zambia's always kind of battled to really build momentum. Let's say. The more I look at it now, I think actually it's a blessing in disguise. This kind of slow development has it's much easier outside of the spotlight. I think we're certainly seeing the spotlight on us now, and it's palpable wherever you go, whether that's on Instagram or at trade shows or just talking to people. You can certainly feel a concerted and consistent interest in Zambia, which makes me very, very proud. And I think Zambia certainly will do it justice. And the likes of ourselves and our colleagues in the safari industry in Zambia, we're very excited about it and very keen to open up to the world. And it's our job to make sure that is done properly and well. There's a lot of lessons around the world where that in Africa where that's increased too quickly.
Yeah. And so what makes the Lower Zambezi so special? Why should people come to the Lower Zambezi?
It's a great question. So there's three things here. The first one, first and foremost for me, is just the chance to do so many different activities from your doorstep. And that doesn't matter if it's in our camps or anyone else's. We really focus on all of those activities. So that is game drive, night drive, walking. In my opinion, Zambia is well known as sort of home of walking safaris, and that often then gets associated with the South Luangwa National Park. I think if people think of walking, they sometimes then think of Mana Pools, certainly up there, maybe Ruaha, the Kruger, and those trails. For me, fundamentally, best walking, hands down, Lower Zambezi. You've got those winterthorn forests, you've got shade over your head, you can stop and enjoy the lagoons, channels, the river, look up at the escarpment, and there's always something to see. And the wildlife is accustomed to walking there, so that it is a big game walk. It's not dung beetles and scratches. That leads me into the second thing, is the density of wildlife. We may not have the variety of different species that other parks have in the Lower Zambezi, but we have a very high density between the escarpment and the river. Again, geography I mentioned is important in this park, and it certainly helps with the game viewing. At any given moment, when you stop your vehicle, pause your walk, or lift your paddle in the canoe, you're going to see more than one or two or three or four species. There's always something happening. And that is really unique. And then the third element is the natural beauty, to be on the Zambezi River and have that escarpment amongst the winterthorn trees and that landscape. I often joke, if I was an elephant and I could pick where I'd retire, I would probably choose that national park.
It's a good spot.
Yeah, it's a good spot. I could probably apply that to being a leopard, a lion, or anything really. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's such a beautiful area that Lower Zambezi. Those forests are just incredible. The light as it comes through filters through the trees, and the wildlife in amongst there, absolutely amazing. And you touched on the variety of activities, and again, for us, it's very important. A lot of people, when they think of Africa, they think they're coming for the wildlife and being on safari, and not necessarily realizing that sitting in a vehicle every morning and every afternoon over and over again gets tiring. And so, this variety of activities is so important, and the ability to get out and walk. I love walking safaris. We try and encourage all our guests to do walking safaris. And different areas offer those different experiences when it comes to walking. And as you say, Lower Zambezi is about the big game and tracking big game. Why are the animals accustomed to seeing people on foot? Why are they a bit more relaxed? Is it just because people have been doing it for so long there?
Yeah, I think it's literally that, Sean, particularly with walking safaris, in that eastern section of the national park, amongst that very intact, very dense winterthorn forest, it is actually ideally suited for walking. It's open fundamentally. It's not thickets. It varies in parts on different levels between vetiver grass and the winterthorns. And so you can plan your approaches. You can see decent distances. And I think that works both ways. It works for the animals and it works for us. And walking safaris and in that environment, it enables it to be really respectful on both sides. So, we can approach as we should do, respectfully and calmly in that animal's environment. And that animal can also choose, how it engages with us. There's enough space. And so, yeah, I think it's just the perfect environment for it.
Yeah. And then the canoeing that you touched on earlier in terms of the channels versus the main river, what are the main differences with that?
That's a really good question. I mentioned it earlier that so few people know that the canoeing was put on the map by Zimbabwean operators in the 80s and 90s, and the majority were coming across to the Zambian side to access these channels. There's 4 main channels in Kutali, Chifungulu, and they run west to east. Same flow of the Zambezi. Discovery Channel, which is the longest, just behind Chula, and the Kulefu Channel. And they vary from about 7 kilometers long to about 11 kilometers long.
Sure.
Going off the Zambezi, back into the Zambezi. They delta back in, so there's often different exits. And I think probably, back in the day, if you're going, Mana Pools and Lower Zambezi are not directly opposite each other. They're diagonal. And so, those Zimbabwean canoeing treks would load up the canoes, get in the main river and canoe 4 or 5 days down to get to these channels. We're in a very privileged and lucky situation in the Lower Zambezi that we can operate those channels much like any other activity, a morning or afternoon game drive. With the sun behind you, it's best to go in the afternoon, and the channels are incredibly interesting because they have low banks, and they're carved into that national park valley floor. So they're the first place animals will find to come and drink, and the activity on them is amazing. So the actual game viewing experience on these channels is absolutely special. So we very often see a variety of game. If you follow our Instagram feed, you'll often see lion and leopard from canoe.
Sure.
Of course, that's an incredibly special sighting, but it is something that is on the cards in that environment. And then I think if we talk about canoeing, we have to also talk about the safety aspect. these canoeing channels, hippos are territorial, Sean. They are one of the obstacles in the channels. It is a little bit more predictable, yeah. So we know where they are. We're canoeing these channels almost on a daily basis. We start canoeing them a month before season starts. We also have the ability to get out and walk around if we need to. And just by the sheer continuity, we reduce one of these variables into something a little bit more predictable. And then we have just the proximity to the camps and game drive loops and stuff like that. So there's a chance to break up a canoe if we need to, for whatever reason, for safety reasons, and carry on a walk or get collected by a vehicle and stuff like that. I think one of the most amazing experiences. It is interesting to get out onto the main river at times, and we do it. Particularly the area from Jeki down to Kutali is very interesting on the main river as well. So that whole area is very lucky. It's got a lot of islands and stuff like that. Makes the main river canoeing also interesting. But yeah, the main bit is those channels.
Yeah, cool. And then you touched on North Luangwa and you guys moving up into that area. What are you excited about there?
Everything.
Good answer.
Yeah. It's Zambia's Big Five National Park. And I would like to say, from a pure seeing animals point of view, it's wild Big Five. Those lions look at you like they've never seen you before. The elephants have big tusks. The sheer herds of buffalo are staggering. And the most challenging one is let me try and phrase this memorably. The most challenging one is a toss-up between maybe 70 to 100 kg leopard and the 2-ton leopard. The 2-ton leopard being the black rhino. So those two are the hardest to see and find. Myself and Kyle were, I'll be honest, reduced to tears on our first safari together up there since opening the camp, and so we managed to see the Big Five in one day. The rhino is obviously absolutely special, and there's no guarantee you'll see it. Incredibly elusive animal, but just the sheer chance to be able to see them in that natural environment is amazing. And then coupled with that complete remoteness, also the concept that a lot of that side of the Mwaleshi River, where our Kutundala camp is based, is walking only. And then the other side of the river is game drive. And that combination to do that in almost virgin territory, I'll say almost, because Frankfurt have done an incredible job looking after rhino there, and the other species have benefited massively. But wild Big Five is probably the way to describe it, and it has that X factor up there. I think you get me when I say this. Like even the warthog have big tusks, and and things just feels untouched.
And I think in this day and age, that is becoming highly sought after. People are looking to get away from the crowds and get away from all of these mainstream areas. And I think this is why Zambia is becoming a lot more popular. But then, even more so, places like North Luangwa are going to do so well because they reduce the number of camps that are in that area. And then it is still a truly wild destination. I'm hoping to get up there this year and come and see you guys up there and put it to the test.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Sean. There's definitely these remote areas. North Luangwa is bloody hard to get to, and it's tough to get to, but the reward is so worth it. We're trying to That's the single biggest obstacle there is access. So we if you stay 4 nights with us at Kutali, we throw in a shuttle flight included from Mfui Airport. This needs incredible logistics. We're stationing our aircraft in the North Luangwa to offer this. This means a pilot, it means maintenance, it means all the logistics behind it. Thankfully, a lot of support from Frankfurt. But my granny, let me put it this way, my granny always said real travel should be hard, otherwise you don't realize that you've actually done it. And it's hard to get to North Luangwa, but coupled with that wildlife experience, it's a lifetime destination for sure.
Amazing. Perfect. Luke, thank you so much. It was really great chatting to you and understanding a bit more about Zambia. I can clearly see how excited and passionate you are about it. And the same with Tyrone when we were chatting to him. It's always been a big destination for me. I've always pushed it hard and absolutely love Zambia. And as I said, we are finding more and more guests requesting it, which makes me very excited. Thank you to you guys for looking after our guests when they are there staying with you. I know the feedback from the camps is amazing all the time. Hats off to all of you guys for all the amazing work you do.
Yeah, Sean, I'd like to say a big thank you to you. Number one, for having myself and Tyrone on this, but also for your support in backing us early on with Tusker Main and Classic Zambia. And I'd like to say I've been on the end of your emails from day one, and the level of dedication that you put into your planning and follow-ups and stuff like that for your clients makes our jobs on the ground a hell of a lot easier. And it's noticeable, and we love to work with people like that. So thank you very much.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thank you again. And hopefully we can send many, many more people your way and come and experience what a true safari is all about.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Sean. Look forward to drinking a mosey with you in North Luangwa National Park one day.
Okay.
Soon.
I'm there. Perfect.